What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and welcome to another review. Today we're looking at the McFarlane Toys Green Lantern John Stewart figure. I got this one while I was on vacation a few weeks back. That's why you'll notice the lighting is a little bit different. I didn't have my whole setup. I just had a little bit of a makeshift deal going on because I didn't even plan on doing any reviews, but I picked him up on one of our rest stops on our way up to Michigan. So yeah, this figure continues the trend of McFarlane just knocking shit out of the park. Plain and simple. There's so much on this figure that just kind of shows you that we were missing something with DCUC, even though the DCUC scratched the comic accurate itch that we had at the time. One of the things that I was always kind of an advocate for and was missing from when Toy Biz stopped doing Marvel Legends to when Hasbro picked them up is that Toy Biz always infused the figures with these added details to make them feel like they exist in the real world, or they exist in a world, you know what I mean, like a proper world. Like Punisher had BDUs on, as well as the vest with the skull and the tack belts and all that stuff. And Wolverine, some of the Wolverines had seams built in, you know, little things like that that we'd start to see later on in our comics as a result of the films designing the costumes in that manner. And as you can see, just look at this suit. This is better detail than the Mezco. And that's saying a lot because this is a $20 figure. So, you know, I've got a lot to say about this figure, and I'm going to jump right into it. All right, let's talk about the Sculpting Paint on this bad boy. The sculpt is phenomenal. The paint is phenomenal. I mean, there's nowhere else to go when you start on that, you know, that kind of a note. Everything is crisp. There's a lot of detail going on all over the place, and there's a lot of things here that I like because they're definitives, and I think they work towards making this a striking figure, and you can kind of see why there was a point in time where this figure was in pretty high demand. This face is unmistakably black man. You know what I mean? Like, it's an unmistakable, it's not a generic one, but it's an unmistakable black man. It feels along the lines of the way that Ethan Van Sciver used to draw him. And there's been other people who drew him somewhat like this, but I like it. He looks youthful, but he looks mature. You know what I mean? He looks determined. He doesn't look evil. Because sometimes what you get, and this is something that there's a few legends that have this problem with the expression, and a ton of McFarlane's previous stuff, you know, from decades ago, where the figure would have this face that just looks like a fucking, you know, I mean, I know they were all about demons and, you know, monsters and stuff, but then when they'd get to the human characters, they would, you know, kind of suffer from that too. They'd still have this ridiculous scowl with so many, you know, wrinkles and lines everywhere, and there was just like zero humanity in the look of the figure, and you got it here in spades. Look at the eyes. Hasbro, take note. Look at those eyes. They're in the right place. Not to say that they never are, but a lot of times you get Marvel Legends where the eyes are really far apart, or the tampo, you know, the paint, the tampo, whatever, is way off. The hairline's pretty sharp, although the area that it takes up, especially on the sides, is kind of weird. But you know, overall it looks great. I'm not going to complain too much. I know there's some folks that will complain about that part, but John Stewart tends to have a slightly Exo-Squad-ish kind of haircut, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up Exo-Squad haircuts, and you'll see what I'm talking about. He's not as bad as most of those, but the shape of his cut is kind of, in areas, it's kind of like that. It's along those lines. But I dig how he looks. I thought at first, from like, you know, a glance, that things would be way off once you get up close. but every single one I've seen, and I've seen him in stores. I saw him in stores for a while before I decided to pick him up. I have to say it's an impressive sculpt as far as the face goes. The paint is really well done. It's really evenly done. I mean, there's areas where it's not perfect, but I mean, for a mass retail figure, it's pretty damn dope. The torso, tons of detail. Everything looks good. I like the fact that you're seeing like an undersuit as well as armor plates, because with John, he is a very analytical mind. The old school Green Lanterns, their constructs and their suits and everything reflected the personality and the imagination of the user, you know, the ring user, ring bearer. So his suit would be extremely intricate because he thinks of all the details. There's stretchy areas so you can see where his biceps are, so that he can actually bend his, when he bends his arm and his bicep flexes, you've got room for that. Same thing on the torso portion. You could see it near the stomach area, the abdominal region, so he can move around. You can also see the plates are layered on top of each other so that he can, stretch, and there's give in between some of the plates. It's just like a really smart and semi-complex design, and it looks great. Like they could adapt this to a live action movie and it would fit perfectly. You see that continued in his legs. Around the quads, you see the more stretchy material, so that if he's doing something that, for whatever reason, like he's kneeling down or he's squatting to do something, and those muscles tend to kind of fill up, the suit will give to allow for that. I like the fact that the panel lining, or I keep saying the panel lining, the pattern of that pattern lining going downward like that and then kind of curving around, it's really organic. It works because it follows the movement of muscles, so it also adds to the illusion that the suit is accentuating his muscles, but then it also is following the way the muscles would be moving to allow for an organic fit, and it won't rip under pressure or anything. This is the character design portion of my brain, looking at that and interpreting that as form following the function. Boots look awesome. They fit and they follow the same rules that the rest of the costume follows. It's not just this generic fashion show shit that you see and hear on a lot of channels when it comes to like Marvel Legends and G.I. Joes, and the colors match and the blah blah blah, and you break up the colors. No, it's not always about breaking up the color, as they say. You know what I mean? Makes it pop? No, it's a uniform. Sometimes the colors mean specific things, and it's not about breaking them up. You know what I mean? It's about balancing the colors, Granted, if this was a movie, they'd probably do something like make the soles of the boots black and add like black in between all those panel lines you see throughout the boot. It's fine. One of my gripes is still there, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But looks great. The back, they didn't forget to continue the detail towards the back. That's awesome, because that's what you're supposed to do. Show us some details, all over the suit. You can see on his triceps and, near his elbows. Same thing, you've got that mesh material, that accordion material that will allow for stretch, some give, so that when he moves around, the suit moves with him. It's just brilliant, man. This looks like this person, whoever designed this suit, they understand the form and the function of a skin suit, and they understand that John Stewart has an analytical mind, so his suit would be well thought out. This is the kind of stuff I like to see, on his thighs. Again, this is on the sides of his thighs. You've got that accordion-ish material, the stretchy material again, and you get the idea that this is, you also can tell it's a different material from the like hard leatherish material on the rest of his thighs. It's just, or his legs in general, it's just well thought out in every area, and I'm glad to see it, because this is what's lacking from a lot of the designs that you see in movies in some instances, but it's definitely lacking from the designs you see on your figures. The ring, this is one of the areas where I feel like they could have pushed a little bit more, or they could have given him a second fist hand. I get that, you know, they're saving costs by, you know, having him have the ring on the right, the proper hand, and then having that hand be open to work with the accessory. But giving him one extra hand wouldn't have hurt. You could have cut down on the accessory and done, you know what I'm saying, like a fist hand with a more detailed, slightly more detailed, maybe put a tampograph of the Green Lantern symbol in the center of that ring. It's good, though. You can tell that it's a ring. It's a little bit more than what you saw on the DCUC back in the day. Not to take anything away from the Horseman. The figure's still a dope figure. You still get the point. But with the amount of detail that these figures have, it just feels necessary for you to go all out, even when you get down to the smaller details. But it looks good. And from certain angles, it looks like he's actually, you know, making a fist and, you know, he's about to utilize his power. You're about to see his hand light up or something like that, and I don't know, it works. So it's a minor quibble, but it works. It doesn't look bad. It looks legit like what we've come to expect. What I really dig about this design, though, is the big if you're looking at like block color, you know what I mean, just looking at the silhouette and everything, and then the block chunks of color. Everything is in the places that you've come to expect it to be for John Stewart's costume, especially if you've been watching any of the animated Justice League series over the years. This is typically how his suit looks. It's mostly black with like a green, almost, it's like a bust of green on the upper portion of his chest and his neck and his shoulders. And then you have the green on his bracers, and then green boots. And that's it. Some variations will include all black going all the way down to the boots. But I like this look. It works, it's striking, it's iconic, and the form and the function are coming together to give you a very unique Green Lantern costume. It doesn't look just like Hal Jordan. Now, on the flip side, it sucks that when they did their Hal Jordan, they just recolored this suit, and that kind of sucks. They should have kind of continued with the differences, you know, because all the Green Lantern suits don't work the same. For me, it's awesome because this is my third John Stewart figure, and I have a ton of other Green Lanterns, and none of them have the same costumes, not even the comic book style ones. So, you know, for me, it's fine. But like going forward, if this is your shit and you love the McFarlane stuff, it's going to be weird once you get a couple of Green Lanterns, you know, by the time you get to Kyle, and Kyle is wearing this same suit with a different color variation. You know what I'm saying? So I hope McFarlane doesn't go down that route when it comes to the colors. I hope he actually, you know, has them sculpt out different suits going forward, you know, with different details. But overall, this is a beautiful figure. Beautiful sculpt work all over. The lines are nice and they're consistent, and the paint isn't caked up all over the place, so you can actually see and understand what you're looking at. The eyes are painted perfectly. The white is crisp. The green is crisp. The symbol is sculpted. It's not just a tampograph by itself, unlike the previous stuff that we got from Mattel and some of the DC collectibles versions. So I'm happy with that. So, you know, Sculpting Paint, this guy is a winner through and through. There's not much for, you know, anybody to complain about needing. So props to them on this. All right, let's get into his articulation. Now, I didn't do this the way I normally do. I just did poses and stuff. This is more of a kind of a quicker look at this figure. His articulation it's pretty standard for your McFarlane stuff. The butterfly joints work a little bit better on him than some of the others. They're not necessarily perfect. Like, this isn't Figuarts level articulation, but it's a little bit more than what we're used to from your DCUCs and from the Mattel offerings. Notable articulation, like I said, is the shoulders. They're cut in a way that allows for more range. you know, both laterally and over the chest. It's not quite what you need in order to get him to like hold and brace his arm. You can fake it, you know, I'm doing a good job here of faking it, but it's not quite there. He can't really reach that other arm and like actually like put his arm on top of his hand on top of that forearm to brace himself while he uses his ring. But you know, like I said, you can fake it. And it's all about the angles you choose to use if you're taking photographs. If you're playing with the toy, I mean, it doesn't matter. You put the arms in the general area and you get the idea, you know? The torso, lower torso, is made of a softer material so that when you move his legs around, they have a ton of give, you know, like around the crotch as you get lower. And I think it's 3 pieces. It's the upper torso, which is the pecs, the abs, the lower abs, and then the crotch. And it works perfectly. I don't have any issues with that. It twists really well. Nothing popped out of place while I was twisting it. I've seen that happen with other figures, like the NECA's April O'Neil figure from the 90s cartoon Ninja Turtle line. But yeah, everything's secure. Everything goes where you want it to go. It's easy to play with him. It's just there's a couple areas which I'm about to get to right after we finish this area that I want them to kind of reassess. You know, there are definite ratchets in the wrists and the ankles, which is pretty good because a lot of figures they kind of just plop over because they don't have any resistance in the ankles. Now the ratchets are in the hinge, not in the swivel. So the up and down motion is where you'll hear the ratchets. Same thing for the shoulders and for the wrists. But all in all, his articulation is nice. He's got double jointed knees too. There's double jointed elbows, I want to say. He's just got a really good range of motion. And for Green Lanterns, they don't really do like Spider-Man level agile poses. So yeah, this guy gets the job done and he looks pretty nice doing it. I just wish he had that fist hand. That would help. A closed fist. Alright, and as I was saying, let's get into the dreaded problems, issues, and nitpicks. Because trust me, I have this, and it's going to be a reoccurring theme anytime I review a McFarlane figure. The ankles, these bulbous ankles that break up the sculpt of the boot and the foot, they need to go. Or you need to find a way to integrate them further up into the boot. Because it always bothers me, and it always messes up the sculpt for me. I know you have Figmas, and Figmas manage to pull it off in a relatively clean kind of fashion, but what I've found with them is they use smaller joints, and the joints are more behind the foot, so that they're not as noticeable. You still get the range of motion in most cases, but they're just not in your face. But yeah, I need them to change that and get rid of the foot articulation. It doesn't really, for me, that toe articulation, I'm sorry, doesn't really do anything for me. That's a nitpick there. The ankle is a must. They need to change that. The wrists are the same way. The wrists are swole as fuck. They just need, you could put that deeper into the forearm, and then, you know, we'd still have the same thing. Like have a smaller joint, like smaller circumference of the joint so that it goes deeper into the wrist, but then have a longer peg in case you want to change the hands. And other than that, I don't have many complaints. That's it. These figures are some of the best figures on the market right now, especially for the price, you know, $20 figures, and they look this good. Like I said, this sculpt looks better than the Mezco John Stewart figure, and you know, that's saying a lot because that's an $80 figure. So those are my nitpicks, you know, my issues. Not very many, and overall you still have an amazing figure. let's talk about the accessories. This is it. That's all the accessories he comes with. No power battery, nothing like that. Now, if you've been collecting DC figures, Green Lanterns for a while, then you know already that you have a power battery somewhere and you can use that for this John Stewart. Strangely enough, most of the power batteries have been fairly oversized with the other figures that have, come with them in the past. So it won't be bad using it for him. In the movie, the power battery was really small. In cartoons and comics and stuff, it's usually kind of big. So it all depends on what your preference is. And if you have movie and comic Green Lanterns, then chances are you have movie and comic power batteries to go with them. But anyway, John Stewart, architect type mind, very technical. So everything that he creates, every construct, is extremely detailed and has all the working parts. I like that. The armor looks really good. You can see a lot of different plates, lots of areas that, have a function, like the shoulder pads connected to the chest plate, and the chest plate having an area for the symbol to sit. It's all well thought out, and that's what John Stewart would do. The Green Lantern symbol prominently displayed on the shoulders because he's a military man, so if he belongs to the organization, he will have those details on display for all to see because it's necessary. You want to fly your team's colors, you know what I mean? The peg hole on the back is for the ammo pack for the big ass Gatling gun. Makes sense. And you can see some of that like webbing or accordion material is present here because the back of the armor mimics the armor that he's already wearing. Well done. I mean, this is what a very technical mind would do. This is how they think. This is how they would interpret, armor, additional armor, I should say, being added to what they already have, and it just looks cool. It works. It makes sense. The pack. So you can tell that it's got ammo in there. You can tell it's coiled up towards the bottom or the top, depending on how you want to, orient the box. But it makes sense. You can tell like the belt would be going up into the top and then coming out somewhere else so that it could connect to the Gatling cannon itself. Makes sense. And here you have it all connected. And you see that like everything falls into place the way it should. I like the fact that they didn't give you a connecting piece from the backpack to the gun because, I mean, it's a construct. You don't necessarily need that. And also, it's a toy. If it was real, he'd have a real belt going from the backpack to the gun. But because it's a toy, you simplify that so that you can actually pose this guy and you don't have anything in the way. Kudos to them for that because it makes perfect sense. The peg itself, standard peg, it looks pretty sturdy. I like that it actually kind of mushrooms out towards the back, and you can see the tiny little lip towards the top, the tip of the peg itself going into the back peg hole. That makes sense. Someone thought about it. It made sense. I mean, sometimes what we've been kind of accustomed to is just a standard peg, plain, smooth. That's it. It goes into the peg, usually, or peg hole. Usually, it's a little bit bigger, so that when it gets into the peg hole, it kind of fills that peg hole up and friction holds it in. In this, you have a lip, so there's a point that once it gets into the peg hole, you know what I mean? It will catch, and then it won't come out unless you apply pressure. Makes sense. The Gatling cannon itself. This thing is beautiful. It's really straightforward. You can see the ammo drum on the, it's not even a drum, the canister, ammo canister on the bottom of it. That's where if there was a belt, the belt would be fed right there. It would be spinning around on the inside of that. You would see the belt coming from the backpack to connect to that canister, and you have your gun. It's great. It's super great. I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there that will paint this thing black or silver or whatever and use it for props for other characters. It's well enough done that you could pull that off theoretically. I'm keeping this for John Stewart to use because this is something John Stewart would make. Not Hal, but John. Because that's how John's imagination works. That's something I will stick with for the rest of my life. I hate the fact that they generalized all the Green Lantern powers and made them all do the same exact thing when they all come from different parts. so the frame of reference for their imagination would be different, you know, from lantern to lantern. But yeah, the detail is consistent all around. Everything looks good, looks clean. None of it looks alien. It looks a little bit on the futuristic side, but then again, this is coming from John Stewart's imagination, so it makes sense. I dig it. The barrel, well sculpted, just like the rest of it. There really isn't an area that I can, you know, nitpick about on this thing. Everything works. I mean, it's one of those few times where everything works exactly the way that it's supposed to. If you've read a Green Lantern comic book, chances are you've seen John do this at least once. You know, if you're a fan like me, you've seen him do it millions of times, and it makes sense. It works perfectly. You don't really have to think too hard. The sculpt work all around is quality. There's nothing really for me to add here that I haven't already said. I'd be repeating myself if I continued on that train of thought. But I like that you're not losing any of the detail, or I should say I appreciate that we're not losing any of the detail as you move around the weapon. Oftentimes with these kinds of things, toy companies will give you a lot of detail on one side and less on another, because the idea is that you kind of display it from a certain, you know, angle. And I like that and appreciate that they're not doing that here. The armor, you just slip it on over his head, and it easily, you know, falls into place on his chest. And then the circle opening fits perfectly around the symbol. Now, if anything, I kind of have issues with this because if it rubs enough, it'll, you know, kind of mess up the paint. But I mean, most of us aren't going to use it that much. But I do like the way that it's not complete until you press it down enough that it's, you know, hugging the outside of the, you know, the insignia, which is raised for a reason. You know, now you're seeing it's doubly so raised for a reason, and it looks really good once it's done. I mean, it's what you would expect from the level of detail that you've seen with this figure. Even the accessory fits perfectly and doesn't make the figure look gaudy. You could even just use the armor by itself if you wanted to, as just like, you know, added, you know, an added indication that he's using his powers. But as it is, it's really awesome. I still love the symbols being prominently displayed on his shoulders. Those look good. I love the fact that the armor itself kind of follows the curvature of his muscles and everything, and it mimics the armor underneath, which, you know, I've said that before, but, you know, I gotta repeat these things. It's well done. Backpack fits in perfectly. The peg is a little snug once it gets into the back of the figure, so it helps hold the armor in place even more. And then you just give him his Gatling cannon, and there you go. You've completed the look. And, you know, I have to say, this is one of the better sets of quote-unquote gimmicks that I've seen on a recent figure in a long time. I don't have any problems with this because it's not anything that's like intrusive, you know what I mean? Like, it's not all up in your face. It's not an aggressive integration of the, you know, the gimmick. The gimmick is essentially just an accessory or a series of accessories that you can or cannot use, and the figure doesn't live or die based on these accessories. That's a plus for me. And I have tons of Green Lantern accessories because I've had tons of Green Lanterns over the years. So this is a win, you know. This is all well done. It's all quality. It's what I miss about action figures, you know. Back in the day when you collected certain lines, they prided themselves on giving you accessories that fit the character, accessories that accentuate the character. And these days I find that you get accessories, but a lot of times you just get shit to shut up the fans or the collectors that are wowed by stuff, you know. And a lot of times they could have done better. Wait till I get to Sam Wilson Captain America from the Disney Plus the Disney Plus wave. I don't know why I can't talk. This happens often, I guess because we're not media trained. But yeah, just wait. But this is great. Alright, let's compare. So here he is next to the DC Universe Classics version. You can see there's a lot of differences here, both in detailing, you know, sculpt work, detailing, type of paint, and then size. It's a huge difference. Not a big one for me, I'm not complaining. There is a big difference, but I'm not complaining. Here he is next to several other lines: SIC, Mattel DC figures, and the Realm of the Claw. I dig this. You can kind of see that he's not too tall compared to the Mattel figures, which means he probably would fit in well with your DC Direct stuff. And here he is next to my Mezco Justice League figures, some of them at least. And yeah, I mean, he's taller, but it's not like ridiculous, you know? He is tall though. And here he is next to some DC Direct, some Marvel Legends, and then of course that Mezco Superman. So yeah, there you go. He's pretty tall. And of course, now it's time for the bottom line. So, overall, this is a fun figure. He's well done in every area. Minor quibbles, minor complaints, minor changes needed to make this a perfect figure. McFarlane is knocking these out of the fucking park. It's kind of crazy the amount of pushback that he got when announced that he was going to be taking over the DC brand, but as you've heard in other videos I've done talking about McFarlane toys, they're doing the damn thing. They're doing the Lord's work, as it's, you know, as they say. His figures just look great. The sculptors are doing amazing work. The engineers are doing really good work. The engineering is better than Marvel Legends. Don't sleep on that, and don't let people kind of direct that conversation elsewhere. They engineer these better than Marvel Legends. There are standout Legends that have better articulation, you know, like the butterfly joint works better and things like that. But as a whole, these guys blow those guys out of the water. Paint, detail, there's so much sculpted detail on these guys. And even the accessories. I mean, they actually come with accessories in some cases. Sometimes they don't come with much, but in general they come with accessories, so you know, there's that. So if you're looking for a larger John Stewart, then this one would be for you. If you want one that's in scale with everything you already have, then you might want to ignore this. But yeah, this one here, I'd give this a solid B. It's a pretty damn good figure. It's worth having in your collection, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So this has been my look at the McFarlane Toys Green Lantern John Stewart. Pick it up if you don't have it. If you just like Green Lantern, pick it up. It's a great figure, but look good on your shelf. It'll definitely look good in your collection, and you might have fun playing with it too. So, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. That's it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.